Hello and welcome to the video. Today we will be doing some work on Roadrunner, who is one of the cars for the Cement City campaign. They have successfully crossed the sponsorship threshold and are now due a sponsor. As such, I will be visually updating them to reflect their new affiliation. Team Handbrake in the Roadrunner is now going to be Miyazaki sponsored, so I made up these stencils to go onto the roof and onto the hood of the car. While this video won't be as explicitly instructional as my other videos, I will still be showing the steps in my process as I go. I won't be taking footage of fiddlier things like airbrushing or detailed hand painting, because I'm not quite equipped to do that yet, but I will still walk people through the steps of the process. Now, my past few videos have been how-tos, and that was in preparation for making this one. This kind of build log will always be connected to Cement City proper, so it will focus on me making entire cars, modifying existing cars, or making up new terrain for the battle reports. Here you see me setting up my stencil by completely masking off the car. I have made a video on this entire process, which you can watch up there. I will be using an airbrush for this next step to paint the lettering in black. Once the coating is one nice solid color, you can start peeling off the tape. This would be the point in the process to do a fancy gradient on the typography, but I initially wanted the text to just be black. However, as I peeled the tape off, I realized it was just a little bit too monotone. If you watch the battle reports, you'll notice that I don't have any blue cars. This isn't because I don't like the color blue, I just forgot to make one blue. So I eventually decided, after I had peeled off the stencil, that I would make this text blue. Now I could have reapplied the stencil to airbrush on a gradient, but I decided to hand paint the blue onto the black instead. This would not be as high fidelity, but it would give me a more painterly look, and it lets me control the texture of the brushstrokes. Roadrunner is mostly inspired by Demolition Derby cars, and the general scrappy do-it-yourself aesthetic they have, so I don't want to go too high fidelity here. At this point, I try to fix up the Z on the windscreen there. Firstly, I do that by re-airbrushing on the stencil, which didn't quite work, and it also peeled off a little bit of paint on the ceiling there, which I'm fine with. I actually like how that looks. So I just ended up hand brushing the letter. And I also carry on hand brushing the rest of the logo into a shade of blue. This is just some very simple layering. I started off with a dark blue, onto a medium blue, into a light blue, and into a pure white on the highlights. A pure white ink, mind you, so it's a little bit translucent. I'll put my exact colors up at this point for your reference. Next up, I decide to give the car some racing stripes to balance out the logo a bit. I decide to go with one on the hood and one on the back, and I also decide to make them red to go with the blue and with the yellow. The tape you have been seeing on screen is some narrow painter's tape. It is even more low-tack than the other brand I have, and I brought it out because I was a little bit afraid of peeling off more paint from the car. If you would like some of this, I got mine at an art store, like an actual painting things on canvas art store. I start off the stripes by stippling on black. I do this because it ends up giving the red stripe a bit of an outline, as you'll see later after I peel it off. I could just stipple straight onto red, but it doesn't look quite as right. Building up from black to red needs an intermediate color, and I choose to use red ochre for this. The actual red will be brilliant red. I am using craft store acrylics for this because I quite like the texture they have when you stipple with them, and it doesn't hurt that they're nice and cheap. Now I could have gone with the airbrush again for this step, but I personally like it when the car has different textures on it. The Miyazaki logo already provides some of that airbrushed on smoothness, so I am happy with that amount, and as you will see in a bit, I'll balance out the hand brushing with a bit more airbrushing in the back. I have also made a point to skip out on painting the roof any further because the paint was starting to peel off. Also, one continuous stripe all across the car would have been way too much red. I soon hit the level of saturation I am happy with on the second layer of red stippling. Now, as I peel this off, you'll see that the red has a black outline around it. It's an interesting effect. It is because the black paint gets steadily pushed underneath the tape as you do the stippling. Craft store acrylics are a little bit slower to dry, so by the time I was stippling on the red, the black was still pretty wet. And it has ended up creating this outline I am quite happy with. We are not quite done with the stripes yet though. For one last step, I decided to do 2 more stripes on the back of the car just to balance out that big empty space there. I stencil it out using painter's tape. These stripes I decided to airbrush on to match the Miyazaki logo and to balance out the overall texture versus the red. These are fairly basic black stripes. I couldn't quite get the stencils all the way underneath the spoiler, so I'm just gonna hand paint those in. At this point, as I was peeling off the tape, I was pretty happy with the composition, so I decided to stop here for this batch of visual updates to the Roadrunner. I keep my cars together with some blue tack so I can take them apart anytime I need to. So now I just put the Roadrunner back together to get a good look at what it looks like all done up. I am pretty happy with it, so I set it up for some photo shoots. That wraps up the first visual update to our first sponsored vehicle. While we are here, we're gonna go into a smaller visual update for our second sponsored vehicle. This next one won't be quite as involved, and I'm actually gonna talk about some other things while that plays on screen. Next up is the ice cream truck Soft Serve, who is the vehicle of the Load Brothers. They did pretty well on their first outing in episode 2 and have earned themselves a sponsor. Now, Soft Serve is for the purposes of this campaign what I personally call a done look. That just means that Soft Serve will stay largely the same across the rest of the campaign because it already has a pretty strong visual identity. For this update, we're just going to add in a little grill to where the smokestack is, just to make that transition from car to plume of fire a little bit more gentle. As my resident sweet tooth homage, Soft Serve already does a pretty good job channeling the aesthetic of their new sponsor, the Cult of the Inferno. If anyone's got any cool ideas for Soft Serve's visuals, feel free to put it down in the comments below. Now, as this video wraps up, we're just going to briefly talk about the channel. I hit 50 subscribers at the start of this month, which I'm pretty happy with. And most of you have probably noticed I moved away from the battle reports to do a bunch of hobby videos. Those were also learning videos for me as I went into the build log format, which you are watching now. From now on, I will put out a battle report, an episode of Cement City, once a month, and the 3 other weeks of that month will be for hobby stuff or build logs. The build logs are kind of the middle ground between the hobby stuff and the playing stuff, as they will always involve stuff I use for the campaign. That way I'll always have stuff to work on and videos to share with everyone. And it looks like I've just about finished Soft Serve's new smokestack, so we'll now officially wrap up. As a bonus, I've also written up a quick guide on how to play Gaslands Twisted Metal style with only 1 vehicle per player. It's not that different from the base game, but it does help to have some guidance. I will put a link to the document down in the description of the video. And that is us for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my stuff, it really does help out. There's heaps more videos on the way, so stay tuned. Until next time.